What's up, friends? It's Haley, aka Bird,
and Randy,
and you're tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast.
This podcast is all about challenging what it means to be healthy and fit. It's about celebrating sustainable behavior change and non-scale victories.
And most importantly, it's about giving the bird to the diet industry and societal expectations of body size. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, you have an entire life to live that does not require your body look a certain way.
Thanks for tuning in.
Now, let's give 'em the bird.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Give 'em the Bird podcast. Randy here. I've got Haley with me as usual. And this week we are going to talk about things that people don't tell you about the postpartum period. But before we launch into that, we did want to circle back to our episode from last week about how motherhood affects how you talk about your bodies and food around your kids and things like that, because we did have some listeners reach out to us with some of their own stories. And one of them I just wanted to share was it was a mother who was getting herself ready, and she was putting on some shapewear, and her daughter asked, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And she said, just to kind of hold things in. And her daughter, bless her heart, was like, oh, Mommy, you don't need that. You're perfect the way you are. Right?
So sweet.
Just perfection. So she was obviously very thankful that was her daughter's reaction response. But she said to me, it's still hard because I'm not happy with my body. And so I think the struggle comes in, and I don't think we talked about this as much last week, but how to respond when you are struggling and when you do find yourselves doing things that you don't want to pass on to your children. Mm-hmm. And so what she and I kind of talked about was, maybe she could reframe it to not something she's doing to make herself look better, but, I just feel a little more comfortable in my clothes when I wear these. Just because it takes the focus on looks and how you feel about the size of your body, but more about your comfort level. Because as we've talked about many times, there's going to be gray areas, and we kind of have to do whatever makes us comfortable. So that was one thing we talked about. And then I also brought up to her, how you mentioned last week, Haley, that it's important, I think, going forward with the littles to kind of explain to them that bodies are going to change throughout our lifetime, and that can bring up certain feelings. And, depending on the age of the child, that may or may not be appropriate at the time. But I think that's another way that you can kind of address things that you might find yourself doing because of how you feel about your body at that point in time, but may not necessarily want to pass on to the kids. So
I love that. Yeah, I love the emphasis on this is what makes me feel more comfortable. Because I know that we've talked about in previous episodes about finding, like you said, the gray area between, I know that diet culture wants me to wear this shapewear, but also if I go out into the world without the shapewear, I know that I'm going to be hyper focused on my body. And so finding a middle ground. So yeah, I think the way that you discussed that with her was so helpful. And I also just want to say, Mama, you are raising your baby right. If she's like, no, Mommy, you're perfect, you don't need that. Like, what a testament to your mothering and your parenting. I feel like when your child's like, you're perfect the way you are, like, oh, swoon.
Right? Like,
so good.
The cutest, the best. So yeah, I just thought that was worthy of sharing, because I think, we're all in different places. And when you listen to an episode that you kind of resonate with, it's just nice to hear that from people that, they're finding ways to implement these things into their own lives. So I love it.
I was also going to tell you, I didn't share this with you before we hit record, but I had a friend reach out to me about our sobriety episode.
Oh,
and how she had originally said, like, perfect timing. I just made the goal of cutting out alcohol during the week. Yay. Well, she she texted me yesterday or the day before and said that she found that cutting out alcohol was actually leading to more restrictive behaviors that she had done in the past. Okay. Yeah. And so we talked about how just this using the term cutting out or eliminating or, whatever you might do, however you word it, was triggering it to then flow into her food and movement too. And so we
Right.
talked about, again, finding a middle ground, and she decided on being more mindful of her alcohol use during the week, but not feeling
Mhm.
like she had to completely cut it out, because she clearly isn't in a place yet where that's doable for her. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it when the things that listeners hear on these episodes like resonate with them and they show up in their life, and we want to hear about it.
Mhm.
We love hearing about it, whether send us a text if you have our phone number, or message us on Instagram is another great way to get to us. So keep sharing your experiences, and I think the more that we hear from listeners, like, it's obviously, I hope that we can provide a sounding board for them, but I think it's also just another reminder, and it's helpful for us as well as we continue on our own, body acceptance and
Mhm.
intuitive eating journeys.
Yeah. These
Hmm.
gray area wins. I love it.
Seriously, like,
It's the best.
gray area win, a GAW,
I love it. We need more
GAW.
gauze in our life.
Give us your GTB moments and your GAWs.
I actually had a couple people reach out about the sobriety episode too. There's more people in my life than I thought that have been considering that. And yeah, I had a friend who like has kind of decided to maybe not completely cut it out, but she shared a win of like being on this weekend where historically she would have been drinking all weekend and she didn't have any. And, at first I was like, are you just like setting this goal just because? Or, I said, well, how do you feel about it? And she said, I feel great. And I was like,
Mhm.
yay, then that's wonderful for you. I love it. So,
Yeah, so exciting. And again, I think it's reminding ourselves too that it's not just about like food and movement, even though, again, like, alcohol is,
mhm.
a food. As we learned, it is a
Yes.
macronutrient.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's so many other ways that the principles and things that we talk about on here can show up in our life. So we love
Yep.
hearing about it.
Love it. So now I want to get
Dun dun
into
dun. No.
the dirty, dirty, the postpartum period.
Yes.
And yeah, just things that you've experienced, I've experienced, we've heard from friends that society, friends, family just do not prepare you for.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm sure you have a laundry list, Haley, just being like 4 months out. Uh, and
Honestly,
I've got some things too, but
I feel like if we would have had this conversation when we first brought up the topic idea, like, we would have been recording for hours.
hmm.
Now that I've gotten back to work, and there's like some space between me and momming, take that as you want it, but for me, that's
Hmm.
okay for there to be space there.
Hmm.
Um, the list is a little bit shorter than it would have been, so I'm happy to report that, but I still have a lot of things.
Yeah,
There's still some
yeah.
things. Hmm.
Um, go. You go. I want to
I
hear
love I love I love we're like, you going, am I going?
it.
It's funny because I was just having this conversation with a friend the other day, because I just shared a couple days ago, FDA released that they have now a drug for postpartum depression.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, amazing, right? Because we need to bring to light this issue that literally 1 in 7, women experience after giving birth. Um, and then I was like also thinking about, I wonder how that statistic would change if we gave mothers, and I think their partners, the support that they need postpartum, and we address the
Mhm.
financial issues and the trauma that is birth and all of these other things. And so a lot of moms were, I had great conversations with moms on Instagram about it. And one of them, who's a really good friend of mine, and who has been more supportive to me, whatever, than I think that she gives herself credit for. She was the only person that told me about this fourth trimester.
Mhm.
Like, she used the term fourth trimester when I was in like my second trimester. And
Mhm.
I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
I have to do this for 4 trimesters? Like, I had no idea what she was referring to. And so I feel like I had this idea that, and it's totally naive, but you have the baby and then it gets better from there. Like that pregnancy is really hard and then you have the baby and things start to get better. And my pregnancy was amazing. I loved being pregnant, literally nearly every second of it. And so in my head, I was like, cake, like I got this, right?
Yep.
And then she started telling me about this, like the idea of the fourth trimester. So right off the bat, I just feel like I think talking about and sharing this idea that like I don't want to say it gets worse, but it doesn't just end when the baby comes. And I don't just mean like dealing with the baby obviously, but changes in obviously your mood and the way you're feeling and your needs and the guilt that you might experience, like all of those things I know for me were and are just very much heightened. But I think this just awareness that like we need support during just the idea of the fourth trimester is like there's a lot of women I think that don't even know that this is a thing that we need to be talking about,
Right. I'm
you know?
curious, when she was referring to the fourth trimester, in what capacity she was talking about that? Because when
Mm-hmm.
I first heard about the fourth trimester, I feel like that was after my kids were born,
Mm.
and I heard of it in the context of like baby basically you have to treat baby as if they're still in your belly, like
Oh,
always like they're going to do a lot of sleeping, but like always having them on you, with you, near you, versus
okay.
trying to be so separate right
Mm-hmm.
away. Um, because I felt a little guilt when I heard about the fourth trimester because with my first, he was in his crib night two, and then from then on.
Incredible.
And and it did work out very well for us. He was a great sleeper, but um my second was not a great sleeper, and so I had a lot of frustration about not getting her into her crib. And then I heard about the fourth trimester, like basically they need to be
Oh,
like on you, with you, all the time. And there's a whole debate about co-sleeping and how to do that or not to do that or whatever.
right.
But I just felt so much guilt, like why am I trying to rip them away from me when
Interesting.
really they should be. But it sounds like maybe she was talking more about just like how difficult it is in that period.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the things she had said, I'm literally pulling it up on my phone. Um, she felt like if there had been more focus or support or education on the fourth trimester, it could have helped decrease her chances and other people's chances of postpartum depression, anxiety, and postpartum rage.
Hmm.
Um, and that like this feeling of once the baby arrives, like moms are kind of left high and dry.
Hmm.
And so I think hers was more on care for the mom, like this, that there's this whole other side of things for 3+ months
Hmm.
that you have to take care of on you and your body and your mind. So, but that's interesting too, what you mentioned about like the attachment and everything too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I specifically, she was the only person that told me about the fourth trimester. And yeah, she just, as she experienced really bad postpartum depression and is still kind of dealing with it from,
Hmm.
both of her girls. And yeah, so I think hers was more in the context of like switching from taking care of baby to taking care of mom almost in that fourth trimester.
For sure. For
Mm-hmm.
sure. And I think they can probably be a little bit intertwined in that expectations play such a huge part in
Yes.
things, um, because you expect that when baby's hungry, they will eat, when baby's tired, they will sleep, and they absolutely do neither of those things. And so that, fuels this like postpartum, like you feel like you're doing things wrong and you get angry and, and then yeah, I think they definitely go hand in hand
Yeah,
in that regard.
exactly. And I think that's something that I knew. I was obviously aware of postpartum depression. Like, um, I know, and I think she'd be fine with me sharing it.
Hmm.
Sorry, Leslie, but Leslie experienced postpartum depression, and my family just has a long laundry list of mental health concerns. So, like, we were very open about that.
Hmm.
I did not, and I experienced a little bit of like prenatal depression, I think. But I had no idea the mood changes that I would experience in terms of like, and I know that I talked to you about it, Randy, like this, like the rage and the anger. And I think that that's something that like we also don't talk about because no one wants to be an angry mom. You know,
Right.
like no one wants to be angry or, have rage or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
Um, but that was just like a flip of a switch. And I was just, oh, and I think because my anxiety was so high. And then another thing, intense paranoia that I'm still dealing with in regards to this like fear that Mal is going to be abducted. Like, and again, a very intrusive thought. And I don't think I realized, like, I know that it's not going to happen. I mean, I
Yep.
say that knowing that it's not impossible, but the likelihood
Right.
of it is low considering so many factors. And yet when we go on a walk, I am so scared to like be farther away than 12 inches from her
Hmm.
stroller when I have to pick up my dog's poop. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had a friend too who she had really intense paranoia and like intrusive thoughts about her child falling out of a window. And she's like, we don't even have a window that logically she could fall out of. But like,
Yeah. That's
I
how it was
didn't,
for me. It was like falling of some sort I was paranoid about. Yeah.
yeah. And like, I didn't know that. I mean, I've had intrusive thoughts before, but I didn't realize like, I mean, it is so bad. It's
Yeah.
just, I had no idea. I didn't know to expect that. I knew to expect maybe the depression or maybe some heightened anxiety, but this, like, yeah, paranoia is the only way that I can describe it.
Yep.
Nobody told me about that.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to like the rage part you talked about because I think that was one thing nobody ever told me either. And I mean, rage specifically directed to the baby.
Hmm.
Like I am so angry at this baby right now. Love you, but
Hmm.
like if something doesn't change, I we need to part ways. Like somebody needs to take over because like yeah,
Hmm.
you get so angry because you're so tired and because like
Yeah.
and I just never expected to feel that. Like
Hmm.
I had to call my husband home one day from work because I was like, I can't be around her right now, and you need to
Hmm.
be here before something happens because
Hmm.
like I'm just so done. I'm
Yeah.
depleted for today.
I remember when you told me that when you came over and met Mal for the first time.
Hmm.
And oh my gosh, the relief I felt when you said that, I was like,
Hmm.
oh, because I was feeling so much guilt for
Hmm.
this rage that I was experiencing and like some of the thoughts that I was having. And again, things that like, you have the baby and it's gonna be so happy and beautiful and rainbows and butterflies, and like you're not gonna have any birth trauma at all. She's just gonna slide right out of you. Um, and when you like, so then when I'm experiencing this anger to this little baby who doesn't know up from down, who has done nothing wrong, so much freaking guilt. And again, nobody told me that this might happen. And I literally, I could cry just remembering when you told me that. I went and I told Tyler and I was like, I feel validated and I feel like nothing's wrong with me. I mean,
Yeah.
something's wrong. There's a lot of things wrong with me, but like, you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
nothing, this is okay. Like,
Yep.
oh my God. It was so freeing for somebody to tell me that because nobody had.
Yeah.
Nobody had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad because yeah, it's so hard and we've talked about how our husbands are very much alike and for Gerald, when she was seemingly hungry but wouldn't eat, was seemingly tired but wouldn't sleep, I just got so overwhelmed and just I could not. And
Yeah.
he, in his mind, it's just a puzzle that he needs to figure out how the pieces go together. And it's a fun challenge for him,
Yes.
and it's like, so he can like come and take over and not be just completely emotionally overwhelmed. And it's great to have a partner like that, but it's also like, what am I doing wrong that I can't do that or I can't see how to fix this. Like
Hmm.
I'm the mom. I'm supposed to be so intuitive and know how to fix everything. And turns out she just needed to be put in her swing.
Yeah.
But I was trying to do all this other fancy shit to get her to sleep. And, so yeah, it's
Hmm.
wild.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say again, mood changes, but not necessarily like I experienced the like intense sadness and hopelessness. And, luckily I continued going to therapy and I was honest about it when I had, your only follow up that you have with your care team, just that 6 week, no big deal.
Yeah.
I told, my midwife about it and everything. And she was really great. And I remember one thing I told her as I'm like sniffling and like holding back my tears, and I was just like, I just know that like this is the way that it is. Like it's okay. Like this is to be expected. And she goes, it doesn't have to be though. Like she looked at me and
Right.
said that, and I was like, it gives me the chills. She was like, it this doesn't have to be what it is like, but again, going back to if we support moms and their
Right.
partners, as they need to. I think another thing that was kind of along those same lines, and I don't know if you ever heard of it, but when I would nurse or this is going to segue into my next one really well, but when more so when I was pumping, I still get this, the only way I can describe it is like this feeling of intense dread when,
Mhm.
when I pump, like just for the first like 1 or 2 minutes. And I had no idea that it was a thing until recently, probably the last month or so, when someone I know, she said, that it's called like Demers, DMERS, and
Okay.
it happens when we have this, they don't really know why it occurs, but this like quick drop in our dopamine levels when we're breastfeeding or pumping, and that's like what causes the milk to be released or whatever. And so
Yep.
some women can feel that, as the way that I described it to my therapist was just like, it's this weirdest for like 1 to 2 minutes, it's just dread,
Hmm.
absolute dread like I've never experienced before. And again, something that I didn't know about. I was texting Leslie and my sister about it. Like, did you have this happen to you? And she was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about, and was like supportive and everything, but
Yeah.
not all women experience it. So if you are a woman who, when you hook yourself up to your pump, or maybe when you're nursing,
Hmm.
and you get this strange feeling, I think it can last from like 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And it's dread and hopelessness and intense sadness and like nothing good is ever going to happen anymore. It's okay.
Okay.
um they don't know why it happens. There's a whole like website, um attribute, or what's that word, associate, what's that word,
That sounds right.
yeah, there's a whole dedicated, there we go.
Dedicated.
Jesus Christ. There's a whole website dedicated to it. But yeah, I know for some women it causes them to like stop pumping, to stop
Yeah, I'm
breastfeeding,
sure.
even though it only lasts for a short period. Like I dread it. So yeah, that's kind of random. But going off on that is nursing.
Mm. Oh
I thought
God.
that, yeah, sweet Jesus. I thought nursing was going to come so easy for me because everyone in my family has nursed. Like my mom nursed 5 kids, and I think I nursed until my sisters and my family jokes that I was like 5 years old, which it's totally fine if you're 5 and you're
Yeah.
nursing. Like all power to you, mama. And like my sister Leslie nursed and didn't really have like many issues associated with it. And so my big thing is nursing may not come as naturally as what they say. It might be a quote unquote natural thing, but it may not come naturally for
Mhm.
you. Um, and I actually looked it
Or your
up.
baby, for that matter. It might not come with
Yes.
your baby. Yeah.
Yes. Like it may not be you. It might be
Mhm.
because of your child.
Yeah.
And
Blame it
that's
on them.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Blame it on them. Um, and I think the statistic is like 70% of women have difficulties with breastfeeding. Like
Hmm.
the majority of women do. Um, but I know for me, oh, the thought, and I talked to my best friend about this too, like just hearing Mallory cry the first like 3 weeks, I had so much resentment, just so bad, so much resentment towards her because I was like, I'm gonna have to fucking nurse. And
Hmm.
I don't want to nurse. It's so painful. She doesn't seem happy about it. Like
Hmm.
it isn't clicking. It isn't clicking. And in my head, I had this nobody gave me this expectation. I put the expectation on myself that like I had to nurse. um, I definitely think there's external pressures that you have to breastfeed, but not necessarily like nurse.
Hmm.
They can be a bottle fed, breastfed baby, whatever. And
Hmm.
maybe we'll get into that, maybe not. But I had this expectation of myself that like you're gonna be the mom that can like whip it out in public, and like hell fucking yeah, like I wanted to be that person, and it didn't click for us. Like it didn't click. and so much guilt associated with like not getting enough food and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. So I think my big takeaway is like this natural thing may not come naturally to you and or your baby.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, I think it would have been way better for my mental health had I given up on breastfeeding and switched to either exclusively pumping or formula or whatever, because it was so hard and probably not worth it in the long run for me. I did end up doing it long term, but good God, those first couple months were just a
Mm-hmm.
nightmare, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, we had to supplement a little bit because one of them wasn't getting enough from breastfeeding, and yeah, there's a lot of guilt with that, and not about like supplementing, but just about not getting enough from me.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, I just wish I wouldn't have put so much pressure on myself, because I think
Mm-hmm.
it would have been a lot better for everybody involved had
Mm-hmm.
I given in a little bit to my own pressures I put on myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was like, I made it, I think 2.5 or 3 weeks exclusively nursing. And then I couldn't take it like mentally.
Mhm.
I was so unwell and there's there's no way that there absolutely no way that I could have continued feeding her and being okay and like not
Mhm.
like hurting myself. Like it was so freaking bad. And I have to thank if anybody has listened to the podcast from its inception, Half Crunched Mama Doc, um Dr. Tori, she was in season 1, I don't even remember what episode. Um she I mean, literally my saving grace. I still text her all the time. So she's a pediatrician. She moved. She's out in Oregon now, sad. But she checked in with me like every day. She really supported me and she asked me, she goes, what kind of support do you want me to provide? Do you want me to push you to keep breastfeeding or do you want me to push you to not breastfeed? Because she goes, either way, like I want to support you in doing that.
Mhm.
She was sending me videos of how to do different things. Like I told her, I'm like, you taught me how to treat a new mom. Like you taught me how to
Yeah.
support a new mom. Um, and yeah, so finally at I think like 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks, I told Tyler, I was like, dude, we're switching to the bottle.
Mhm.
Like we're switching to the bottle. I know that they say you're supposed to wait until 3 weeks, till
Mhm.
introduce a bottle. And I was like, we're jumping the gun, I guess. And some people start a bottle right away.
Yeah.
I kid you not, the moment I started to do that, my mental health didn't completely fix itself, but at least like that cloud just
Yeah.
lifted. And he was up in the middle of the night and actually doing something and not
Mhm.
just like rubbing my back and telling
Mm.
me like everything's going to be okay as I bawl. My
Yeah.
tears just splash on Mal's face. Like, so yeah, I think breastfeed it's really just like fed is best.
Exactly.
Find the method that works best for you. One of my best friends, she goes, I'm a formula mom. Like
Mhm.
I tried it with my first, tried it with my second. Nope, it didn't work.
Mhm.
I'm a formula mom. And I'm like, and that's okay. Like
Yep.
that is absolutely okay. So that was I think the nursing one is a big one for me. And I'm still exclusively pumping.
Mhm.
And we haven't had to supplement yet. I make a lot of milk, which it has its pros and cons. But yeah, I'm so glad that you have to balance what's best for you and what's best for baby, I think.
Yep. Yep. Um, I think it's so amazing that Tori asked you how to best support you,
Hmm.
because I think we forget that we can ask people that question. Like we try to assume what they want to hear, or, we don't even consider what they, or want to hear. We just provide our opinions, and it's hard to know which way to go with those kinds of things. And simply asking that question can make all
Yeah.
the difference. I love that she asked you that.
I know. I remember when I read that text, I was like, I don't know what I need right now. I don't know. But I remember thinking too, like, I want to apply that to my own practice as well, like with
Hmm.
other people, asking them, you know, in what way do you want me to support you? And if that changes, please let me know and I'll support you in doing that. Because
Yeah.
and I think like the work that I do, it's like I do believe that each of us is the expert of our own body. And so
Hmm.
if you think that something else is better for you, how can I support you in reaching that goal or doing that thing? So I agree. I was like, you're so good at this. Like, why can't you move back to Iowa and be my
Right.
freaking pediatrician? Like, you
Right.
saint. She's so
I've
good.
actually heard that in the context of, this is totally unrelated, but in the context of somebody like grieving. Um,
Mm.
do you want to talk about it or do you want to be distracted by it?
Yep.
Because I always find myself like very paralyzed in those situations. Like I don't know what to say to this person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, just questions like that can let people know that you actually care and want to do what's best for them and helps you, figure out how to best support them. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, this is switching gears a little bit, but
Yeah.
your comments about like intrusive thoughts reminded me that so when my kids were born, I was a pharmacist, am a pharmacist, was practicing then, and something happens. Like I'm a smart person, I'm a medically minded person, but something happened when I had kids, and my I had mush brain. Um, I would triple, quadruple, like check 8 times that the dose of ibuprofen or children's infants Tylenol that I gave them was correct because I was paranoid that I was going to get it wrong. Or like I used, those like nose sucker, the nose Frida, the like suction
Yes.
thing. I was trying to do that on Levi when he was a baby, and
Oh no.
I was like, what if I suck too hard and the pressure like sucks his brains out?
Oh my God. Like when you're
So
too smart.
like so ridiculous, just like not even humanly possible. But
Mm.
it's weird what happens to you after your
Yeah.
kids are born.
Yeah. Also, side note, did the nose Frida on Mal this morning. Got a
Ooh,
huge booger. Oh,
so satisfying, right?
so satisfying. I saved it and I had to show Tyler when he got home. I was like,
Saved it.
dude, look at this. Like, yeah. Uh,
Amazing.
yeah, it is the way that and my therapist describes it as like, I mean, our brains literally change. Like
Yeah.
the connections and the structure like changes after having kids.
Hmm.
And that kind of brings me up to something that I didn't expect, but your priorities change. And it's not that I didn't expect it, but I specifically about work. And I say this, I absolutely love my job. And I care a whole lot less about it. Oh, hello.
Hello. He really wants to talk to me because I have it on Do Not Disturb, so they
Oh
must have called
shoot.
me twice.
Hopefully the kids are okay.
Oh, it looked like it was some out of state call, so I'm not worried about it.
Well,
Anyway,
if you heard the phone ring, you might also hear my dog panting in the background. So
oh
Lola
Lord,
girl's just like, yeah, you know
we're
us.
professionals. We
We
are
are
professionals.
so real. Yeah. But I absolutely love my job. I love what I do. I feel very passionate and committed to my work, right? Like both the GTB side and then also my professional work as at the University of Iowa. I care a shit ton less about it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I did not expect that to happen. And I wonder if it's because I never had this like dream of having kids.
Hmm.
I never, for the longest time, up until like maybe, you know, 2 years ago, I didn't even know if I wanted to have kids.
Hmm.
Um, and so that brings up a whole nother topic of when I did get pregnant so quickly, I had an insane amount of guilt associated with it, but for another time. And so I always thought that it was going to be like a working mom. Like, like I am so committed to my job and I
Hmm.
love what I do and like boss babe, you know, and like no, I did not expect it. I did not expect me to care so much less about my job. Now that doesn't mean that I show up less in terms of supporting students and
Right.
supporting clients, but I'm not willing to go that extra mile that I could go before because now I realize that extra mile can be put towards Mallory and like
Right.
it's that was really surprising. I don't know if you experienced that at all like with pharmacy being that you put so much time and energy and money into it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I found that something that meant a lot more to me after kids was my free time and my flexibility. Not just
Mm-hmm.
because I need flexibility to meet their needs in terms of like, doctor's appointments and all that stuff, but um yeah, just being able to spend time with them and not having to be, commuting for as long, or not that my commute was crazy by any means, but just little things like that that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
expect to be something that I really cared too much about. I started to, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to all of that. Like it just, um, I didn't expect like GTB was my baby and like
Mm-hmm.
this helping people improve their relationships with food movement in their body. Like I do feel like that's my calling and like what I'm meant to do. And then Mallory comes along and I'm like, mm, that can wait.
Yep.
Like, and I'm still like at my job and I still am doing GTP things and all of that. And it's been really supportive for me mentally. Um, but yeah, that was just really surprising for me. And I think, again, going back to this idea of like allowing yourself to change your expectations, I think is really important. And just knowing that you can make it work for you however you need to with,
Mhm.
when you do have a baby. But that was something that was really surprising to me that nobody really, I mean, I think people said like your priorities are going to change, but
Mhm.
nobody who is like really career minded and really passionate about their work told me that. And so
Yep.
I was like, well, of course yours changed. You hated your job from the beginning,
Right.
like
Right.
so that was surprising to me.
Yep. Yep. And finding a way to like you said, still giving 100% to your job,
Mhm.
but knowing that if something, if it comes down to having to make a choice between the two, like you are obviously going to choose your child, and that might mean not taking on the extra after hours things or
Yes.
whatever,
Mhm.
you were able to do before, or I shouldn't say able, more willing to do
Yes.
because you had, you know, your priorities were different. So,
Right. I didn't have babies. I just had dogs,
yeah.
and they can watch themselves.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's a perk.
Yes. Um, I'm trying to think of other things. I feel like there's definitely some with like maybe exercise. Um,
Hmm.
as like an exercise professional, I think a lot of times people think, "Oh, you probably were so excited to get back to exercise." Nope, I was actually very happy to to wait.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still taking it really easy. Like I just started adding in some power movements to my workouts, so
Woo.
that's been really slow. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, what other things did you have on your mind? Anything that we haven't covered?
Um, Gosh, I feel like those were the biggest things for me. I'm a little, further removed, so I have trouble kind of remembering everything because it
You've
was kind
blocked it
of,
out.
you're right. I really have. Uh, I guess one of the things is, people think, even though people tell them otherwise, people think that they're going to have so much time, uh, on maternity leave. Um, and then like their partner, may leave and then come back home, and it's like, where did the time go? What just happened? I didn't brush my teeth, and you can't even account for what happened during the day because you don't even know. Um,
Because you're so sleep deprived and just mentally ill.
yeah,
Like,
right, right. And between feedings that take 30 to 40 minutes and pumping after, and then, it just, the time just absolutely disappears. And people tell you that, but I feel like until you go through it, you can't even really comprehend that, like, there literally is no time. Um, and you expect that you'll be able to stay on top of the dishes or food or vacuuming or whatever, and it's pretty unrealistic, I think, to have those expectations. So yeah, I just remember a lot of feeling guilty that I wasn't getting those things done and not understanding what happened to my day. um but
yes, I
it's weird. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I ever told anybody this, but my plan was that at the end of my 12 weeks of maternity, like we were gonna have batch so many episodes for GTB. I was gonna
Well, I
have
knew
like
that
a
was your plan, and I was like, girl, we'll see.
oh, and then I was also gonna have a self-paced course for you all.
Sure.
Nope. Nope, it ain't there. Um, I was gonna have a wait list of nope, didn't do that. Like so many things. And I think that was another thing too is, I mean, I don't want to give advice, but from my experience, do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, don't put anything. I was making to-do lists for myself too. Like,
Mm.
you know, after the 2 weeks postpartum, I was like, okay, I got to get it together. And don't put any of that on you. I even bought a fucking book to read, Randy. I'm on page 11. Like, like what?
But I love it.
Yeah. So I think that is something too. Like, expect nothing and maybe
Hmm.
do something, you know?
Well, and I think that brings us full circle back to like the fourth trimester. Like literally your only job is to feed this human one way or another and sleep when you
Yes.
can. And that's
And
that's literally it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and take care of yourself. That was
Yeah.
another thing
Yeah.
that Dr. Tori, Half Crunch Mama Doc, she shared with me this list that she had made of daily things she had to do to help her mentally and like physically. And she put it on her fridge postpartum. I made my own. And it was things like I had to move some way.
Hmm.
Nothing intense. Still not
Right.
doing anything intense. Um, I don't even remember the other things. Get outside, snuggle with my dogs. Tyler wrote on
Hmm.
there, like, hug your husband. And if you know
Oh.
Tyler, he is not that kind of guy, but that's how bad I
Yeah.
was. Like,
Oh.
um, so I think, yeah, I completely agree with you. Keep your child fed, sleep, and take care of yourself. And
Yep.
like, that's a fuck ton to do. And
It is. That's a
it is
lot to
so
do.
much to do. Yeah.
Hmm.
And taking care of yourself, yeah, I want to say like shower and brush your teeth, but like more so eat. That was something I forgot to eat. Like you forget
Yeah.
because you're so, maybe I shouldn't say everybody is, but in our experience it sounds like we were so anxious and like depressed and
Hmm.
like struggling that I forgot to eat. And so you drink water, right? Like the very
Right?
basic things. It doesn't have to be like meditate for an hour and like use essential oils. Like bare
Yeah.
minimum basic needs, take care of yourself.
Yep. And let people help you. I mean, if you're
Oh,
open to it, but I recommend being open to it
yeah.
because it really does take a village. And, having people that want to help you, whatever that is, like dropping off food or letting you have an hour by yourself without baby or whatever, like take that help when you can get it if it
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't cause you more anxiety. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to do that because a fresh coming in fresh or having like one thing less on your to-do list is a huge help.
Yeah. I just thought of one more random thing, and I'm probably going to regret saying this now because it's going to make the episode like not. We were flowing really well to the end. But one one other thing that I thought of is it is okay if nobody told me that I was going to feel this way. Feel really uncomfortable if I'm like pumping in the other room and everyone's with Mallory.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I remember just like being around a lot of people and your child just getting passed around. Some
Hmm.
people might be really comfortable with it. I felt so uncomfortable. And I remember this feeling of, I just want to take her and say she has to nurse for 8 hours and take her in the back room by
For eight
myself. Like,
hours. Yeah.
oh my gosh. And then being away from her because I was pumping and I hear her crying and I'm like, I know Tyler's out there, but like, ugh. So that was another thing.
Mhm.
I didn't think that wasn't really shared with me, or I didn't expect that feeling to be so intense of quit holding my baby. Like
Yeah.
I don't feel that way anymore. My best friend came to visit me and I was like, "You can hold her if you want." She was like, "Well, I know that you mentioned that you feel oddly if people hold your baby." And I was like, "Not you, Erin. Like hold
Yeah.
my kid. Like you're basically her aunt." Like
Right.
you know.
Right.
And it's getting better now, but yeah, I remember that too. We had a bunch of Tyler's family were over and I love his family. And I
Hmm.
was in the other room and I was just like, I feel so uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
So another
Yep.
random thing.
Yeah. I do remember, I didn't feel so much like that when people were holding my baby, but I do remember, um, I think it was Levi. He was, or maybe it was Evelyn. I don't know. They were upset and crying, and I was trying to nurse, and it wasn't working. And we were at like a family function. I was at somebody else's house in another room, and people kept checking on me because they
Oh,
could hear the baby crying, and I was like, just leave me alone. Like, you are causing me so much anxiety by
Mhm.
checking on me, as if I can't get it taken care of myself. That's what
Right.
it was sensory overload on
Hmm.
top of probably a bunch of other things. But yeah, there's just
And the
so much
irony in that
weirdness.
of mother knows best, but yet mother is locked away in a room with a baby who's crying, and I think that I know better. Like the
Right.
irony there.
Right. Right.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Well, this was such a good episode. Longer than some of ours have been, but I feel like it felt really good for me to get this off my chest.
And I feel like we only scratched the surface, honestly, of things that we could talk about when it comes to
Oh,
postpartum stuff.
yes. But we want to know if any of you are postpartum, which I saw there's a creator or a coach on Instagram who says you're never not postpartum. Like after you have a child, you are postpartum.
It is so
Like
true.
it doesn't go away, you know? Um, but yeah, share your experience. What were things that you wish that people had told you postpartum or about postpartum that they didn't? I think it would be so amazing to just have this like list of things. And my friend that I had mentioned at the beginning, she did say that she was very candid with one of her friends about her experience, and her friend was like, "You make me not want to have kids." So I hope that that isn't the case for any of you. Maybe I'll add in a little disclaimer at the
Right.
beginning.
If you're on the
um,
fence, maybe don't listen. Or maybe do, I don't know.
uh,
Maybe listen.
Honestly, you choose. If you made it this far, you're too far gone at this point.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, let us know things that you wish you would have known that you didn't. Things that you would pass down to other moms or to upcoming or new moms. Um, and just remember that, if you have someone in your life who just had a baby, is about to have a baby, think about how you can instill in them what you wish someone would have instilled in you in a positive and supportive way. And thank you for creating and like having this space for us to have these conversations because I feel like they're so supportive and healing for me. Ugh,
Yes.
love GTB. Okay, we will see you all next week. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, head on over to Apple iTunes or Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Give 'em the Bird podcast to stay up to date with all things GTB. We'll see you back here next week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird.